Hi everyone, and thank you so much for coming back to my YouTube channel. My name is Lydia. I'm the Fun Finance Queen, and I am your money mentor online. I'm here to make finances more simple, more gettable, and more fun. So today we're going to talk about a pretty interesting conversation or a pretty interesting topic, which is financial red flags to look out for in a relationship. So I find that these are important to pay attention to at the very beginning of a relationship, but it's never too late to actually pay attention to these things. So I'm going to list for you 5 potential things that you should pay attention to see if you and your partner are on the same page when it comes to finances. So the first financial red flag that I wanted to bring up is any form of manipulation. Are you being held to ransom for money? Is money being used to control you? Is money being used to shame you? Is money being used in a financially abusive way? What does that mean? Is money being held back from you? Is money being thrown at you and then withheld in a different way? That is all a means of control or manipulation. And you shouldn't really be in a position like that. If you are in that position, take it as a red flag. Take it as something you want to pay attention to and see if this is a relationship that might need to be adjusted in the future. So, the second red flag that I wanted to bring to your attention was having different financial goals. Now, it's difficult for people to align anyway on all things, and I don't expect you to align on every single thing with your partner. But the one thing I'd like for you to pay attention to is how similar or different your financial goals are. So, for example, if you say, okay, I want to save 50K, and the other person says, I'm not interested in saving at all, or you say, I want to buy a house, and the other person says, no, I'm not interested in buying a house, neither of those are absolutely wrong or right, but you need to be on the same page when it comes to finances, or at least a similar page. For you to be in opposite spectrums, that might be a challenge. So I would highly recommend that at least you understand what your partner's financial goals are. And if they're very different from yours and there's no way of uniting those goals, that is a red flag that you need to pay attention to, because at some point it will actually become an issue. Now, the third one I wanted us to pay attention to was an unwillingness to discuss anything related to money. So before people get married, we always encourage that you go through some form of premarital counseling. And part of the premarital counseling process is to discuss money. Always, always, always discuss finances. If that is not discussed in your premarital counseling, then we want to have a deeper discussion about where you're getting counseled and what's missing. But what needs to be talked about between the two of you in terms of understanding where each other are with regards to money? A few things. I would encourage you to discuss your credit scores. You need to be able to understand where this person's scores are. If they have good credit, that's great. If they have bad credit, why? What is their intention of improving their credit? So important that you cannot underestimate it. Because if you have a great credit score and your partner does not, that means you guys have a different approach to how you spend money, and your historical record of finances is completely different. So if you decide to buy a house at some point and your credit score is great and his isn't, you think it's going to mess you up in some way? Absolutely. You won't get as good a rate as you should get. The other things that you could potentially discuss are savings. Do you believe in savings? How much savings do you have? Are you willing to put those savings together? How does that work? Do you have a pension? Are you putting money aside towards old age? Or is that person going to be living off you when they retire because they don't have a pension? Do you have debt? How much debt does your partner have? What's your approach to debt and what's their approach to debt? This is all so important. These are things that need to be discussed. And if there is not a willingness to discuss these things, that is a massive red flag. Pay attention to that. The next thing I wanted to bring up was uncontrolled spending. I'll tell you a brief story about this. A situation where they were married, quite young, and they later discovered in that relationship that their partner had a really bad spending habit. This person would spend on anything that moved. Impulse impulse purchases were their thing. They would buy anything that they wanted, whenever they wanted. There was no budgeting. So they may have been making a good amount of money, and I believe this guy was making a solid amount of money. But when it came to spending, he always, always, always managed to outspend what he made. And that's a crazy position to be. So it's so important for you and your partner to be able to track your spending in a good way. It's a great habit to have, and it's an important thing for you to be able to understand. So you know that if your partner is spending something, you guys are able to actually come to an agreement on how your money is spent. If there is an uncontrolled spending habit and you're not aware of it, or you're finally becoming aware of it after a while, or that person had been hiding it from you, it is super important that you are aware that that is a red flag. Because if your spending habits are completely different from theirs, that will become a challenge at some point in your relationship. Now, please bear in mind, guys, I'm not throwing this out at you for no reason. I actually have been married for a long time, and my partner and I have had to grow through some of these things. I'm not just speaking out of my, out of no experience. This is over 20 years of experience of marriage and managing money that it's so important that I want to share with you guys. The last thing I want to bring up as a red flag, and as I said, there may have to be another video on this because I think I'm going to get a lot of questions. But the last thing I wanted to bring up as a potential red flag is risky spending habits, or risky habits that could affect your money. So, gambling, for example. I'm not talking about buying the odd lottery ticket. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about a situation where a lot of money could be lost on gambling. This is something that if you're not aware of, you should be aware of. If your partner has a habit of gambling or spending a lot of money, or you doing high risk activities, and you're not aware of those and you become aware of them, that is a massive, massive red flag. Pay attention to that, because sometimes people cannot control these things. So I would highly recommend that if you notice that, or if you hear about that, or if that comes into your attention, that you pay attention to it and actually try to make sure that that is resolved. So those are 5 really interesting red flags that I would ask you to pay attention to. If you see them, do not ignore them, my friends. These are things that could really affect your relationship. It's a representation of the sweat, a representation of our labor, a representation of our hard work. So you want to be on the same page with your partner in your relationship, so that you guys can move forward together financially. Now, I hope this was actually of benefit to somebody. I'm sure it will be. I know you're going to have questions, my friends. Please put them in the comments below. And of course, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on the next one.